Welcome to the Smack Happy Design Videocast, where we explore all things web and marketing. With your hosts, Nicole and Danielle.
Welcome to episode number 18. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Danielle.
And I just want to remind our audience that we'll be taking some notes for you. So if you just want to sit back, relax, and listen, you can download the notes at smackhappy.com/videos. And I also wanted to mention that today each of us have a dog in the room. So if you hear loud chewing or barking, that would be why. Today our guest is Laura Renner, founder of Freedom Makers, a company that helps military spouses with virtual assistant positions, thereby helping small businesses with their overflow. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Tell us a little more about yourself.
Oh, sure. So I'm an Army brat, Air Force veteran, and after a while, I had a recruiting business, and I was coming across a lot of small business owners who weren't ready for their next employee or didn't want an employee, but they still needed help, like you said, with overflow. So they didn't need the continuous support of an employee. And come from a military family. My brother is still in, and he was getting ready to move. And it just occurred to me that we have this common issue around military spouses. Because they're moving so much, they struggle to find gainful employment. And so I thought, well, here's an untapped resource of talent and an unmet need. Let's put two and two together, and voila, Freedom Makers was born.
Yeah, I love it. It's such an awesome idea, and your purpose on both sides is just fantastic.
Very cool. Army and Air Force in this family too, so.
Oh, yay.
My brother-in-law also, he was in special ops, I think.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So let's talk about delegating. How would you go about figuring out what to delegate or figuring out what is delegatable?
I'd say, so the simplest way to start is to simply look at your to-do list and figure out what are the things that you don't want to do, or that immediately someone else could do. Like, it'd be easily transferable, and therefore you could have someone else do it. So that'd be the easiest, like simplest, sort of low-hanging fruit to figure out, is just look at your to-do list right now and what are the things you could have someone else do. But then after that, probably I think what a lot of us business owners face is that, well, they could do that, but they would need to know this and they would need to know that. And all of that is in my head. So how do I get it out of my head so that someone else could do it? And so then you'd want to build systems. And so that's what makes it delegatable, is if it's a system so that it's out of your head and sort of a step-by-step process to get a task done, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then, so those are, say, like the two biggest ways to figure out what to delegate is first look at, I know the hot phrase these days is zone of genius. So what's outside your zone of genius, or that you just don't know how to do or don't enjoy doing, like what's always at the bottom of your to-do list. And then if you can't immediately delegate it, figure out how to build a system around it. And that might even mean making the task as small until that little piece is delegatable. An example is, I met a business owner. He had built a whole system around prospecting. And so the first phase was sort of researching who to contact, their contact information. The second phase was actually calling them. And then the third phase was taking notes and keeping notes on what the conversation was about. And so, but he was afraid to let all of that go. And so I was like, well, why don't you just start with one part? Like, just delegate the research side of things. And then once you're comfortable with that, maybe delegate the note side of things. And once you're comfortable with that, then delegate the actual calls part. And so that's what I mean by just break it down until it's something that you're comfortable having someone else do.
I like.
I'm thinking, like, how can I delegate all of my meetings? Just kidding, but not really. That's like my least favorite. Not that I don't love meeting with like amazing people all the time, but it's just like I never could figure out for myself, like, the best process to, like, get myself back into, like, one hat from another. Like, when you're in a meeting and then you're doing meetings and you're in that meeting flow, and then you have to go and do something, like, way different. And it's just hard to, like, get back into it.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't know if anyone else struggles with, but that's, like, my biggest struggle. And I was thinking about that when you were talking about delegating, and I was like, well, I don't think I can do that. So kind of stuck.
It might be, how do you structure your day or your week?
Yeah.
I was doing recruiting. Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays were big task heavy days for us, because we'd post the job on Monday, look at resumes on Thursdays, phone screen on Fridays, and the following Monday type thing. So I would schedule all my meetings on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so I knew on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I was not doing any office work. I was just going from meeting to meeting to meeting. So that's how I did it. But also when I first started out, I realized I get really sleepy in the afternoons. Most people do, right? But if I scheduled meetings in the morning, I would just take a nap in the afternoon. I wouldn't get any work done. And so I realized I'm most productive in the mornings. So now all my meetings will usually be in the afternoons, so that I'm productive in the mornings. I'm engaged with people, therefore not sleepy in the afternoons. And that's how I was able to balance that. So I don't know if those ideas are helpful, but
that is helpful.
Structure your day.
I think in a way we do have our set, like, I personally have a set schedule where people can schedule meetings, and it's in the more productive part of the day. There's so many, like, things that change, I think, for all of us, like when we work from home, and you know, trying to figure out the kids, the dogs, the plans, the doctor's appointments, and everything else. So, but yeah, I think maybe if I could try doing more of, like, you know, the productivity part of it, like, where am I most productive, and maybe trying to figure out how to arrange things better that way. Week to week. It would be week to week for sure. But yeah, those are great suggestions. And I think I can think of at least 3 people who I've worked with client-wise that could probably do the same thing, and it would help them as well.
And that's actually a great example of systematizing, right? And so it might even be, like you're saying, because you're having to juggle kids and appointments and things like that. But let's say you set for example, Tuesday and Wednesday as your meeting days.
Mm-hmm.
Then that becomes the rule in the family, like no doctor's appointments on that day, or someone else has to pick up the kids from school that day, or take them to their activities. Like, that becomes part of your system, is the rules, the parameters around that system. So if that's a meeting day, then everything else everyone knows that that's a meeting day, and everything should flow around that.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I also liked the way that you kind of broke it down in your example, because the first thing I think when you say, well, you have to create a system, I think, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, right? But if you're tackling it, you know, like little pieces at a time, and like gradually getting through it, then that makes it way more doable.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I was really thinking about that too, I feel like every time, if you Google how do I delegate or something like that, one step is always build a system, but it doesn't say how to build a system. And so because of that, we developed a way to help people build systems. And there's basically 3 components. There's a trigger, tools, and actions. And so the trigger, I think, is a key component that's missing in a lot of systems, is what causes that system to go into action. Right. And so in the example of the meetings, Tuesday is the trigger, right? Or it might be, in our case, whenever we get a new client, they fill out a form. So when they fill out that form, that launches a message to us. So that's the trigger for us to start matching them with a virtual assistant, right? So that's the key thing, is automating that trigger as much as possible. And I don't mean automating using technology, but that could be an option. But no, like, decision or action needs to take place. So in our case, that form triggers us, right? In the systems example, Tuesday is the trigger, right? And then tools are like the software needed, and even like the logins for the software, but also the rules and parameters, right? So if, for example, if it's voicemail monitoring, they need to know, calling people, like confirming appointments, they need to know the script for what to say when they're calling people to confirm appointments. And also, like, if something needs to be rescheduled, what are the rules around rescheduling? Like, what's your calendar? What are like Tuesdays only would be the rule, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then how would you want to be notified? Like, do you want an email summary, or do you just want to say you don't want to know anything, you just know it was handled? Like, so those are the rules. And then the actions are what are the steps of the system, right? So those are the three things: triggers, tools, actions to create a system.
It really sounds like you're creating a habit.
Yeah.
Like,
A habit
I'm learning. Yeah, go ahead.
A habit that's not reliant upon you.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess habit, there's probably a few different definitions of it, and it might even have sort of like I think when people think about habits, they think of like the negative things, like, oh, I have a bad habit or whatever. But I'm learning now, like in my personal life, to adopt positive habits, and just kind of the habit ends up becoming just a part of what you do, a part of what your system's like or whatever, so it becomes more natural, I guess, like more of like a second nature thing rather than, oh, I have to do this and then this happens and then this happens. It just becomes like a part of your life, which makes it seems to make things easier. I hope it will continue to feel that way. But yeah, it just reminds me of like, it's a positive habit that you're creating to help make your life a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Who doesn't want to do that?
Right.
Yeah. So do you have some other examples of some types of things that people might delegate? What are some of the common things?
I'd say a big one lately is social media coordination, is what I call it. Like, the business owner might create the content. They know exactly, they write the blog because they know their business so well, but then getting it posted everywhere is a bit of can be time consuming. And so they're like, they'll delegate someone else to be like, here's my blog, go ahead and take care of getting it posted, or build a infographic around it, or a quote. What's that thing called?
Well, we said infographic.
Yeah,
like an infographic quote.
Right,
pretty much.
Yeah, so like the image with the quote on it that you post.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if there's an actual name for that. Or maybe there is, like for the young and social people.
You don't mean meme, right?
It's not it could be a meme, but maybe not as comical or anything like that. But
like an inspirational quote with like a nice picture or something behind it. That's what I was thinking.
Blog or whatever. But just stuff like that. Like, people don't have the time to sit down and pull that out of their blog and create it, right? So they'll just have someone else do it. Another one is newsletters, right? Like, they'll create the content, but to get it uploaded into their newsletter and get it out to everyone, like who has time to think about that when you're running your business and supporting your client, right? And so they'll use us for that. A lot of especially our service-based businesses, like attorneys, consultants, or whatnot, they'll use us to do what I call onboarding new clients. And that's a big one because that's a first impression. But also, you want to get off to a good start, right? So if you have, you got to get them to sign the contract, you got to get them up into your invoicing system. And if you use a CRM or anything like that, you got to get them all into that and get them ready kind of in the back end so that you can start with them on the front end. So that's another thing people can delegate. And then other things might depend on their comfort level, like billing or invoicing, email, voicemail, things like that. I call it client care, but basically, especially for service-based businesses, if sometimes you're waiting on the client to get stuff done or get submitted to you, and they may not follow up with you, so you kind of have to hold their hand through everything. And so some people will delegate that to have a VA like check in regularly with the client, like weekly or every other week or something, about where they're at with getting things submitted or completed. And so just sort of helping people stay in line, basically.
There's two things that I keep thinking about when you're talking about this. It's like, well, I have a question for you. But before I ask the question, I'm thinking about all these things that you said and all these things that we could possibly delegate, and how pretty much our team does all of that. So that leads me into the question, well, like, you know, pat ourselves on the back, but also like, what would you suggest out of all of those things? Or maybe there's something else that you didn't mention that would be like something that you would encourage a business owner to delegate so they don't have to, like, would it be social media? Like, you know, tell them like, don't worry about the social media. Don't worry about the newsletters. Like, find an expert to help you like do that sort of stuff. Is that like kind of what you were saying?
I think the big thing about what to sort of start first or delegate first is what you're uncomfortable doing,
Okay.
dislike doing. Like, for example, with me, ironically, I'm not so good at admin, specifically around coordinating. Like, one of my big pet peeves is trying to coordinate a meeting between, especially when there's multiple people, right? And finding the right time and things like that. And so, but what we do in our company is we have clients speak with up to 4 VAs before choosing one they want to work with. So that's at least 4 calls to get scheduled. And then once they pick someone, then we schedule kickoff training. So that's the 5th call right there to get coordinated. And I just noticed it was always last minute, like, oh crap, I gotta get these calls scheduled, or you know, and so one, again, what kind of impression does that leave on the client? But 2, like, how many clients did we lose because I forgot to follow up, or I did it so last minute, that kind of thing. And so I ended up, that was one of the first things I delegated. And in some ways that was kind of scary because that's an important piece that I was letting go of. On the other hand, I stunk at it so bad that it helped our business grow by delegating it. And the other thing along with that too is that, you know, coordinating isn't rocket science, right? So in a way, I was beating myself up. I'm like, why am I so bad at this? It shouldn't be that hard. And once I just got past that and was like, screw it, I don't like it, I'm not good at it, let me just have someone else do it, it helped our business to grow. So that's an example of, you know, things that you're not good at, no matter how easy it is, if you're not good at it, you don't like doing it, no matter how important it is to your business, that's something to consider letting go.
Yeah. It makes me think of too how important it is to have those great team members and those great people to trust that are doing this really important thing for you. And it always reminds me of, you know, when people are applying or going for like a coordinator position, I feel like a lot of like some corporate, maybe not all corporate, but some corporate and some places think of like a coordinator as like, this is the bottom position, this is a low paid position, like that. They're doing really important stuff. And, you know, I've been in coordinator positions where like I was doing everything, like, you know, in the sense of everything for the person. And it, you know, it's if you mess up this one thing, you know, it could mean like detrimental things happen, you lose a sale, you know, someone gets the wrong idea about a blog you wrote or whatever. So it's super important too, I think, to remember that those people are important people in the whole system of your whatever you know, corporate, small business.
I tend to look at them as like the train station coordinator, right? They're the ones making sure all the trains are running on time, the tracks are getting maintained, the schedule is posted, so that everyone knows what's going and what's going where, who needs to be on those trains, and making sure they're all running on time. And in a way, it doesn't seem as important as the train engineer, but that position is basically keeping everything moving. And without that position, then everything comes to a halt. And so it's an often overlooked but very important role.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Agree, because I've been there. Not here. We're good.
So what is the most surprising thing that someone has delegated with your virtual assistants?
With us specifically, so now I'm trying to think like what's our craziest one, but I think in general, what I've seen is when people try to delegate sales, it's not as successful, right? Because no one knows your business as well as you. And that's what always cracks me up too, because they call me thinking they can do it commission only. And so then it seems like a win-win, right? There's no cost if I don't get any sales. And then if I do get sales, it's just a portion of revenue. So it seems like a win-win. But the problem is no one's going to sell as well as you when it's primarily your baby, right? But on the flip side of that, what I've seen that's been surprising in a pleasant way is when people delegate the actual delivery of their service. So a clear example would be if an attorney hires an associate attorney, right? So now the attorney isn't having to do all the legal work. They have an associate attorney there doing some of the work, right? And I see that a lot with consultants and even sometimes financial planners, where because it's all, they've spent years gaining that expertise and that knowledge, so they feel like they're the only ones who can deliver it to their clients. And when they come around to, wait a second, I could hire an associate who could maybe start doing the lower level service issues or whatnot. And then as I trust them and we begin to work well together, I can give them more of the higher level tasks or client services, then they're able to grow their business, right? And so I see that a lot with business owners where the service is their expertise. So like attorneys, financial planners, consultants, even photographers, things like that, where they have to balance, am I running a business or am I delivering my service, right? And so there's a cap on growth if they don't switch to a business owner, right? But they love what they're doing. So do they even want to switch to a business owner? I mean, as a solo practicing attorney is a business owner, but do you see what I mean? Where they're like only running a business versus also delivering a service. So that's been I would say a surprising thing when they're willing or ready to delegate delivery of their service to someone else. And they don't use a VA for that, right? They need to find someone else who's also trained in that area. But they might start with a VA, like an HR, you could start with
or they could use a VA to help hire that person.
Right.
Is this in versus on?
Yes, this is working in your business versus working on your business. And unless you have people,
sunshine.
yeah, unless you have people helping you out, your business is never going to grow because there's a limited number of hours in the day.
Right. And some people don't want it to grow, and that's totally okay too. But if they want it to grow and they're struggling to figure out how, it's when the light clicks that they can have someone else do it. And right, and what you're saying about using a VA to hire someone else, or as an example, we have a client who's a website designer, and he uses his Freedom Maker to do sort of the small pieces of the website design, mostly like taking the site live, or when they're maintaining for a client, doing the updates, the simple updates. And, we have Freedom Makers that know that stuff. We're not going to ask them to build a whole website from scratch, right? Hopefully he's not doing that, but he uses his Freedom Maker to just like take it live or do some minor updates. So that's an example there as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd say, yeah, that's pretty surprising. And on that note, like, I don't know if you guys have read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. That's kind of a popular book. But in it, he talks about, he built some sort of product company or something. But for him, a big obstacle once he got over was that he hired a customer service company, like a call center. And they would, every time a client had an issue, they were blowing him up trying to get the answer. So finally he set a rule: if the issue can be solved with something like less than $200, you guys take care of it. Decide whatever you think is best. And as long as it's under $200, take care of it. If it's more than $200, I want you to call me. And that opened up a whole bunch of time for him. And so that's a big piece too. Like if you're able to say, okay, at this level, I'm going to trust that whatever you decide is the best decision. And above that is when I get involved, right? And that's a big piece too, is because you've built this from scratch, or every little detail of your business, letting that little stuff go is hard, right? And so if you're able to say, okay, this level or below, I trust you, that level or above, that's when I need to get involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I come from a place of being a control freak. So when I started hiring the team, like Danielle and and everybody else. Danielle's 3-year anniversary is tomorrow, actually.
Oh, congratulations to both of you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a really hard time in the beginning, like letting stuff go and letting other people do things for me, but
Right.
it's been a fantastic decision. And I think, having this awesome team of people, helping out is just amazing. So.
Right. That's even me, what's that phrase, the shoe cobbler's kids have no shoes or something like that. Like the other day I had a discussion with my employee where I realized I wasn't trusting him enough, or I was to let him do his job. And I don't want to say him specifically, it was just I wasn't letting go so that he could do his job. And I had that epiphany a few weeks ago, and finally I was like, it's yours. I'm going to step out, you take care of it. And so far so good. There's a guy named Michael Hyatt. Well, if you Google it, a bunch of people take credit for it, but I like his version, and it's called the 5 levels of delegation. And level 1 is basically do exactly what I said, how I said to do it. And then it works its way up to level 5, which is I trust you completely. I don't need to know what you did. Just get it done. And then 2, 3, and 4 are kind of like working up to that. And so it's neat for me, at least, when I'm hiring a new position. I'm like, okay, this position itself is a level 1. It doesn't matter how I feel about it, just the way I want it done is a level 1, or this position is a level 4. And then that informs who I hire to fill that role, because some people are good at level 4 and level 5, and as a result aren't good at level 1, and vice versa. Some people can do all 5. It just depends, right? And one isn't better than the other. It's just if you know what level you're looking for and you find someone who can fill that, who can work in that level, then it's a good fit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like some people just want to be told what to do and how to do it and just get it done. And some people want to be creative and like do it their own way. So.
And like I said, it doesn't mean that one is worse than the other, right? Like if you want a level 1 and you hire a level 5 and they're like, well, why would I do it this way? When I can do it that way. And all that does is upset you. It's not a good fit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I guess I guess it comes back to like what you're comfortable with too, right? So like whatever kind of fits into your business. Not that there's, I don't know if I want to say that, but not that there's anything wrong with like trying to change, a little bit. Like if something could work better by, hiring more level 1, level 5, versus those 2, all for it. But like if your process like has been run like tried and true, for years and it works well, like, why reinvent the wheel? Right. So I guess it just depends on like really what your business is like, and if you have room for improvement, or there's always room for improvement, but you know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
All right, so it's time for our fun question. What inspires you the most?
Well, so this might seem cheesy to say, but freedom does, which is partly why I named my company Freedom Makers, because it's all about, I love doing what I want to do. And so people who inspire me are the ones who sort of buck social trends or social pressures and just do what they want to do, right? Like the founder of Patagonia, he's inspirational to me because he just built what he wanted to build. And so to me, it's about having a completely virtual business and being able to run it from anywhere, or retiring early, things like that. Like, so that's it. Trying to create the most freedom possible in my life and therefore in my business is what is most inspiring to me.
And you're giving that to the people who work for you and then also to the business. So you're just creating freedom everywhere.
Exactly. I always say freedom is our guiding principle for that reason. And so anytime we come up with a decision we're facing, that's what I ask myself is what creates the most freedom for all the parties involved.
Oh,
and
I like that.
Keep things as simple as possible too. And so, because I tend to overcomplicate things.
Well, and freedom too, I feel like, is a very, I don't, for lack of better words, I guess, patriotic term, so a lot of these spouses who are in these situations where they're like, I can't figure this out. I mean, you're giving them freedom and while their spouse or their uncle or their father or their mother is, out there fighting for our freedom. So I think it comes full circle, and it's really cool. I really, really like the concept of your business.
Mhm. Yeah, so speaking of your business, can you tell our audience where to find you?
Sure. Our website is freedom-makers.com, makers with an S.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Laura. And thank you to our audience for joining the Smack Happy videocast. We aim to help elevate your business through real life experience and advice.
Until next time, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Smack Happy Design videocast. For more information and downloads, visit smackhappy.com/videocast, where you'll find more episodes and the opportunity to subscribe on YouTube or iTunes. You can also sign up for our newsletter delivered to your inbox monthly. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Again, that's smackhappy.com/videocast. See you next time.